I stumbled across a really interesting interview the other day with Carol Kaye. In one section she really talks about the obsession now with scales and modes rather than chord tones for bass players. She chatted about this generally for all instruments and for soloing as well, but she stressed the importance of bass players learning chord tones so they can use them in their walking lines and in their bass lines. In this video I'm going to discuss the main points from this section of the interview, and I'm also going to show you some of the exercises that Carol Kaye plays so you can take those away and work on them. If you're interested in developing your understanding of jazz bass, then these concepts are crucial to that process. I've written out these exercises from the interview in standard notation and tab, and you can get them on a free PDF by clicking the link below this video in the description. They're really useful to start working on some of these ideas that we'll talk about today. I'll now show you the first minute or so of this part of the interview, and I'll break it down afterwards.
But you know, a lot of people don't know, but one of the first players of the electric bass was, was Montgomery.
Right.
He went on the road with Lionel Hampton's band playing electric bass back in the 50s. And he's the first one that used electric bass, I think, with a big band. It sounded good too, you know. So if you get the right jazz sound, and of course, when you're playing walking lines on bass, here again, you've got to practice your chordal notes. You've got to know where those chordal notes are so you can go, for instance, See, you've got to know those chordal notes so you can build hills and valleys in your walking, see.
That was a really important point right near the end there, where Carol Kaye says you need to build hills and valleys in your walking lines. What she means there is that you need to create some shape. Okay, so even if you don't read music, if you look at some notation of a walking line, it will kind of go like this, okay, with some shape. You're not just kind of playing little blocks each bar like this. Okay, you want to have a smooth line, and there are different ways to create these smooth lines with chromatics and substitutions, that type of thing. But that's what you're aiming for. You have a musical line the same way as you'd craft a melody. This is the exercise that she played at the beginning of that section. It's an arpeggio exercise. She's playing a C major 7 with the natural 7th. And she's playing D minor 7, but this time we're starting on the 7th, okay, the flattened 7th. Okay, so it's just going backwards. Okay, but it's coming down, descending. So C major 7, D minor 7, and then E minor 7. Okay, we're playing it with this fingering pattern. You could play it here. Okay, but we're just going to shift less, so we're playing it here. And then we're playing F major 7, but starting on the 7th. Okay, just doing it backwards. So that bar. Okay, the whole thing. That's a really good exercise there. The practice, you're just using the arpeggio, the 7th arpeggio. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can do that by pressing the red subscribe button on the corner of the screen. And if you click the bell and select all, then you'll get notified as soon as I release a new video.
And get the right sound, and you don't go... I had a guy come over from the UK that learned some of these tunes, and he was... So I said, no, long. got a jazz lick here, E flat 7s, E flat 7, move it up 3 frets. It's the same
Can
chord.
you break that down and explain that?
Okay, you're moving it like a diminished chord. So you ba ba do be de de be be do do de de ba. See. So major, minor. See.
So in this section, Carol Kaye is talking about having a pattern and moving it round the neck. Okay, she talks about doing this over 3 frets, but staying on the same chord. Okay, this is the lick that she played. Okay, she moved it up here. Okay, up 3 frets and then 3 frets again. Okay, so she's just moving it up 3 frets at a time. So it's really handy to be able to do that, to have a pattern and move it around. It's useful when you're playing riffs as well, okay, and starting on different root notes. It's a bit of a fiddly lick there. Practice that and try and move it around yourself.
That's just jazz stuff that all the jazz players know how to teach and how to do. Not so much today because it's non-chordal today. It's note scales, see. Note scales don't get it because they will ruin your ear and your fingers get used to playing scales and you can't find those notes. So it's important to practice your chordal notes.
So
You're not hearing this. You're not hearing these notes. You need to hear the intervals of the chordal notes that you can use, including the substitute chord notes. Yeah. Chords are formed by every other note of the scale. You know, nobody back in the 50s played note scales. You know, note scales are traveling notes. Traveling notes, but mostly in jazz, you're going to use chromatics. See, I'm chromaticing. Chromatically. Is that a word?
it is now.
Yeah. See, that's all F. You know, this is F. I'm playing off of these chordal notes. Same pattern off of these.
The important point here that Carol Kaye is making is that we need to use the notes from the arpeggio. They're our chord tones, they outline the chord. The scale doesn't. This is the scale, so C major. Doesn't outline the chord, but if we use the arpeggio, that outlines a C major 7 chord, or we could use the flat 7 for a C7. We could have a minor 7. So these 3 shapes clearly outline the chord and scales don't. I'll now show you the arpeggio exercise that Carol Kaye played. This is based on an F triad. Okay. So triad is 3 notes. So we haven't got the 7th in there. Okay, and then Carol Kaye played around each interval, above and below, similar to an exercise that my mentor gave me years ago. It's a really cool exercise. So that's based around the root, and then the 3rd, and then the 5th, and then the octave. Okay, remember this is all down on the PDF. So practice doing that for F, arpeggio, then try it on different arpeggios. Try it on C, D, G, A, for example.
If you weren't working every night, you'd go out and jam somewhere, you know, in the 50s. And occasionally I'd be playing with the group and somebody had asked to sit in and said, oh no, don't let him sit in, he plays scales. Because we all knew that you can't find those jazz patterns. That's not a scale pattern.
This is really interesting. The fact that scales or using scales a lot in jazz is a newer kind of concept, and it really wasn't done in the 50s. And I do remember seeing an interview with a sax player, I can't remember who it was, talking about, he was an older sax player and he was saying they just didn't ever learn modes. He didn't know what modes are, okay? So it just kind of wasn't really used back then.
Those are not scales. That's from these notes. You're doing your parallel fourths to them and stuff like that.
Carol Kaye is using a diminished pattern. It's a really cool pattern. Go down further. So you can see if we start here, we're moving up a fret each time we move a string higher. It's just using 4 notes. Okay, and the pattern can be thought of as starting on any of those 4 notes. Or okay, so any of those notes there. So that's a kind of diminished pattern on D sharp. And then this is the lick that she uses. So she's just using this pattern here. Okay. Just using those 4 notes. Okay, so that's got this kind of diminished sound to it.
But you can't find those notes from note scales, and those are the patterns that all the jazz players have used, and they still use that. You don't learn that so much in school because unfortunately you have a lot of former rock players that never played jazz in the 50s that didn't know all this stuff.
This explains a lot to me, kind of backs up what I thought before. I get a lot of students when we start playing jazz, walking bass lines, they ask me if they need to know the modes. And I say no, learn the chord tones, okay? So they can be useful if you start soloing, but when you're constructing walking bass lines, you need to think in chord tones. A classic is so what? Bass players kind of just say, oh, I can just use the Dorian mode for that, but it gets boring quite quickly. If you think more in harmony and substitution chords, that kind of thing, you can create more options and a more interesting walking bass line. Otherwise it just sounds like you're walking up and down the Dorian scale, which you are doing, okay? Well, I hope you found this video interesting and educational. It's a great interview. The concepts we discussed today do require a deeper understanding of harmony and a bit of an understanding of jazz. So I hope lots of the concepts didn't just go straight over your head, but they're really interesting to look at. The main takeaway from this video is to focus on chord tones, on arpeggio shapes, okay? The root, the third, the fifth and the seventh. You'll use these fundamentally in your walking bass lines, so learn those rather than focusing on scales or modes. Carol Kaye's exercises that I showed you in this video are going to help with that process, so make sure you grab the free PDF and start working on those. I'd love to know what you thought of this video, so leave me a comment below and let me know. And if you're keen to work on your jazz walking bass lines, then check out my course Walking Through Jazz. That's a deep dive into the jazz blues progressions, and it teaches you to be able to create your walking bass lines, authentic jazz walking bass lines that sound great and that really work with these different progressions. Don't forget to help me out by liking and sharing this video and also subscribing to my channel. And if you felt you got value out of this lesson, you can always buy me a coffee. They're $5. The details at the bottom of the screen here, or you can click the link below in the description. Don't forget also to check out my website, gbshed.com. I've got loads on there for bass players. I've got courses, books, merch, and details of my Bass Masters membership site. This is Greg from Greg's Bass Shed. Hopefully see you very soon in the next video.